Hello, everybody. This is Alexandra Lantz. This is my statement on education policy to Mrs. Betsy DeVos. So I have prepared 4 important points about education that I think we should really look at, especially with the upcoming election. So the first point that I want to speak to you about is on standardized testing. And I really do believe that we need to decrease the amount of standardized testing our students are taking in America. According to Joel Spring, teachers in the U.S. reported that they do not believe these tests are representative of students, teachers, or school success. They believe that teacher-made assessments that are more applicable to the real world will be more beneficial for students. Teachers also reported that they do not believe the achievement gap will close with the implementation of these standardized tests. But why won't the achievement gap close? Well, this is because wealthy families with appropriate resources will take their students to get supplementary tutoring, while poorer families will not have the means to do so, therefore actually widening the achievement gap instead of closing it. While the pressure of high-stakes testing grows and families seek tutoring services for their children, the shadow education business will then grow as well. Shadow education businesses such as supplementary education services will provide lobbying to politicians who promote their service or product. This is to maintain their steady flow of funding. A test-driven education system does not exist because it's what's best for our students, but because they are supported by the educational business industry. Therefore, standardized testing is not truly representative of how successful a school is, or their teachers, or their students. A student's socioeconomic status often depicts or may often influence their capability on standardized tests. I would hope that the future of our nation's education policy will promote what is developmentally appropriate for our nation's youth. My next point is about voucher systems. I do not believe the voucher system is the direction we should be taking our education. Why? The voucher system has caused a drop of students in public schools, but also a strain on the budget and resources of these public schools. Vouchers are often considered an assault on public schools. This is because public schools are required to take all students, while private schools are not. This means that students with disabilities or students who are English language learners are being educated in public schools. Arguably, these students need extra resources to be successful in education, things like ELL teachers, special education teachers, paraprofessionals, assistive technology, just to name a few. But with the voucher system, this money is being taken away from the public schools rather than being put into it. Spring believes that public schools are the path to upward mobility. Vouchers bring in 1/3 of private school funding. Perhaps some of the funding that is going to voucher systems could be used for universal preschool, which brings me to my next important point. I think you could use some of the funding from the voucher system to establish universal PreK. You could also use some of the funding that is going into Title I schools. Title I funding is distributed to districts with low-income families, and it is designated to close the skill gap. However, by the time students reach elementary school age, the skill gap is already present. Allowing all students to go to preschool may be a better use of some of that money. Mr. Trump's presidential counterpart, Joe Biden, is planning to triple the amount of Title I funding if elected president. I would argue that there are better uses for that money, like universal PreK. The U.S. continues to increase funding for public education, but politicians are still claiming that schools are failing. Clearly, our politicians need to find somewhere else to put this money while it can still benefit children. Universal PreK could help eliminate a portion of the achievement gap by giving all students the same exposure to education at the same age. My last important point about education policy involves extracurricular activities, and I believe that this is one of the most important points to closing the achievement gap. Money is not the answer to solving the problems in education. Norton Grubb even said dollar bills do not educate children. In fact, there has been no direct correlation between money and school outcomes. Why doesn't this money have an effect on students? Because a student's grades are influenced by many different factors, including ones that happen outside of school. Schools may have a variety of resources to utilize during the school day, but what happens after students leave school? Giving schools more money will not fix the achievement gap because of cultural capital or individual assets that give social mobility. Students who have parents with more resources and time will always do better than students who do not. Perhaps we can use some of the funding that we're putting into school and use it for activities outside of school, such as extracurricular programs for neighborhoods in poverty. This could help increase a student's cultural capital while decreasing the achievement gap. When asked about the priority of funding in their schools, many administrators admitted that supplies for the arts was the lowest priority for classroom spending. This means that during a budget cut, supplies for gym, music, and art class would be the first to go. The arts could arguably increase a student's cultural capital, though. Extracurricular programs, including music or art programs, STEM programs, exercise clubs, even tutoring, and so many more, could help students in poverty get the programs they need to be successful outside of school. So, in conclusion, I do believe that lower standardized testing, less use of the voucher